Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Welcome back, everyone. I want to talk about our kids to start out with. There's so many being diagnosed every single day, even adults, with ADHD, autism, dyslexia, many other challenges, somewhat in that wheelhouse. And many believe that just really not, maybe medication will take care of it. But there's so much more that can be done to make things better, if you will. And that's without medication, no invasive procedures. And guess what? It's backed by science. And we're going to learn all about that today. Pay attention if that's you. Maybe you have a child dealing with some challenges. Maybe you know somebody who is. And this gentleman is going to enlighten us on something that's pretty revolutionary. It's called NeuroFiT, the NeuroFiT Connection. And Dr. Timothy Beck joins us today on the program. Welcome. How are you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Steve?
Very well. Very well. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
Done quite a few podcasts in the past about ADHD and support for parents and such. This is radically different in terms of, and is it just for children? Let's get that out of the way first.
That's our target audience, although we do have a number of adults that are working with us. Adults are a different breed in terms of the way that we work with them. As with kids, we like to have them come into the center 3 times a week. If I said to you, Steve, you'd have to come into the center 3 times a week, you'd be, yep, no, I have a job, I have a life, I have a family. Not going to happen. So we have a different program for them. So our main target is kids, because if we can get kids early, it's quicker, it's better. They respond better, and they can have a better life. They don't have to struggle with it for their whole adult life.
Interesting. And we're going to go deeper into this, but essentially, what's going on here to make that change with children that have these challenges?
So these disorders you mentioned, ADHD, dyslexia, autism, and you can look at OCD, anxiety, depression, all of that. They're primarily hemispheric imbalances. So one hemisphere is overactive, one hemisphere is underactive. And that is caused by retained primitive or infant reflexes. So if you look at a baby as an example and you touch their cheek, they're going to turn towards that. That's called the rooting reflex. That reflex should be gone by 3 or 4 months of age. If it doesn't, and there's 8 others that we look at, if any of those stick around, what happens is it causes the brain not to develop properly. So in a simplistic way, the brain's kind of going, okay, I'm waiting for this to happen, for the reflex to go away before I can start to take this next step, which is usually developing postural reflexes and doing some development. So what's happening here is when these reflexes stick around, the brain doesn't develop properly. So if you look at dyslexia as an example, it's a right brain strong, left brain weak issue. If you look at autism or ADHD, it's the other way around. It's a left brain strong, right brain weak issue. So what we do is we correct that. We actually get rid of the primitive reflexes literally by using them. And you can buy books on that, on the internet today, and go to Amazon. They have tons of them, and how to do it. And then we take the next step and we actually integrate those. Strengthen the weaker hemisphere. We also do some other stuff. For example, one of the things we found with dyslexia is they tend to have eye tracking issues. So we'll look at that and we'll correct that. With some disorders, dyslexia, dyscalculia, they might have auditory processing issues. So we'll correct those as well. One of the big things we find is that the hemispheres, if we can get them balanced in terms of the strength of the hemispheres, we also find that they're not in sync. So that they're communicating, and they're communicating like they should, but not as quickly as they should. So we actually speed up that processing as well. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, this is fascinating. Backed by science. Tell me about that part.
Mm-hmm. So it's been the original core work was done by Dr. Robert Malello. He's been doing this for almost 30 years now. And his work has been backed by McLean Hospital, by Harvard University, and a bunch of other institutions. He's had over 200 research papers published, including a groundbreaking, well, a lot of groundbreaking books, but a textbook that a lot of schools are using now to discuss how the brain works and why the brain works the way it does.
How did you get involved in this?
Oh, that's a longer story, but essentially my wife started working for Brain Balance, which is the company that Dr. Malala co-founded, gosh, many, many years ago. And she fell in love. And she started following Dr. Malala in terms of not only his work, his written work, but actually she went out to visit him and started taking the courses that he offered. And about 2 years in, or 2 years ago, a little more, she discovered that the way that Brain Balance was doing things, while it worked for many, many kids and still does, it could be better. And so she said, I have to, in good conscience, I have to do my best for these kids. And so she decided to form NeuroFiT Connections. And so I, being, having during COVID, which is kind of the fun part, our offices were back to back. So I got to hear her talking to the kids. And it
Wow.
was success story after success story after success story. And so when she came to me and she said, I want to do this, I was like, great, let's go.
That's so fascinating that
Yeah.
you're hearing in real time how this is making major changes, major breakthroughs in families' lives. Wow.
Yeah.
So this is not virtual. You have to be at your center. Is that correct?
It depends upon the kid itself. So again, like take adults for example, we would actually put together a program. Ideally, actually not ideally, we actually insist that you come in for an assessment. So for example, Steve, I don't know where you live, but let's say it's New York as an example,
I'm in New
and you
York.
decide, well, there you go.
And you're psychic. It's
So
amazing. Look at that.
it is. So you decide, hey, I want to do this. You come down to our center, you do an assessment. It takes a couple hours, and get to visit our fair city in Cary, North Carolina,
Mhm.
and we'll put together a program for you. The rest of it can be done virtually for you. Ideally, you'd come in once a month for a checkup. So essentially, where you'd say, "Where are you?" But we can do a lot of that as an adult virtually. For kids, if and we'll tell the parents, look, we'll put together two programs. One is where they're in person, and so they're coming 3 times a week, and one is where it's virtual. I'll tell the parents, look, if you feel confident that you and your child can do this at home without us being there, then go ahead and do that. And it's a
Mm.
cheaper program. But if you feel like there's no way, and actually to one father's credit, and I love this, I said, here's the deal. It's going to take a lot of time. And he goes, I don't have that kind of time. I mean, just being honest. I love my kid, but I can't put forward that kind of time to help them and run my business. And so he brought his daughter in. That's excellent. That's what we want is that kind of honesty. We have a number of kids who are what we call hybrids, so they'll come in once a month every 4 weeks. So for us, a month is 4 weeks, but they'll come in every 4 weeks and they'll get. We'll just reassess them to see where they're at. For most kids, though, they come in and they're in here center 3 times a week, and we can actually see the progress as they go. So I could tell you tons of stories. Like as an example, if you don't mind,
Please.
we have this young girl. She's autistic. She is 5, although if you looked at her, you think she's 7. But one of the things that happened at her last visit is she was examining her hands, just watching them. Now think about a baby, and you've seen this as a parent, perhaps, where their baby's just looking at their hand. They're fascinated with the hands, like I can make these things move. That actually is an indication that they're beginning to have body awareness. They can actually start to feel their body, and and aware of that this is my body. It's one of the precursors to speech. So we know for this little girl that she's going to be speaking probably in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Think of it coming from the eyes of a parent where
Yeah.
they feel kind of lost. Yeah, I don't know, how my child is going to develop, what they're going to develop into. What you don't know the future. Yeah, yeah, I love the story. Share another one, could you?
Sure. Um, Gosh, one of my favorites is one of the stories that actually I heard when I was back to back with Jackie. Um, this little boy, she'd worked with him, and it was the end of his program. He had ADHD, but one of the things that he wanted to do is he wanted to be able to tie his shoes. And you think that's not a big deal, but for him it was. And so Jackie said to him, "So you said you wanted to be able to tie your shoes. Let's do it." And his dad was sitting there and he said, but I don't have shoes that tie. And his dad took his shoe off and put it on him and said, let's tie your shoes. Taught him how to do it. And the little boy was so excited. And dad said, we're going to go buy some shoes with ties today. So, it's that kind of stuff. We had a young boy. He was 14. He had dyslexia. He's a football player. So to his credit, and this is really important, that he was a football player because he wanted to be able to play for Duke. And he had such poor grades. Duke said, if you can get your grades up, you can come play for us. And so he worked really hard, but he had dyslexia. And so you'd listen to him read, and he sounded like he was maybe 4 or 5 in terms of his reading ability and his comprehension. So 2 weeks into the program, after working hard, he was reading at a college level. Now he couldn't comprehend it. That came a few weeks later, but he was reading at a college level after a few weeks into the program.
My gosh, just to confirm, how old was he?
He's 14.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah, he's probably 15 now. He was playing for several teams at the time.
So these dramatic changes, let's say somebody goes through the program, do they have to, call it maintenance, go back again occasionally, or once it's been kind of figured out, that's it?
Yeah, once it's been figured out, that's it. It's the brain's neuroplasticity. What's happening is the brain is changing, and once it's changed, it's going to stay that way. Actually, one of the beautiful things is that when they're done with the program, their brain will continue to change. We've had parents come back to us and say, my kid's starting to do this that they've never done before, and it's well, brain's continuing to change. It's awesome.
That is like truly amazing.
Yeah.
And I think of it in terms of a muscle. All right, so you work out, you build muscle, you build biceps. Okay, great. But after a while, you have to go back and stay at it if you want to keep the muscle tone. But that's not the case here.
No, because think about it, in terms of muscle tone, if you stop, you're stopping, right? So you might, for example, be working out every day, doing upper, lower body work. And so that's great. And you're building up this muscle now, and then you stop, you're going to probably do things like walking and all the normal stuff that normal people do. But if you think about your brain, you're using your brain all the time. So it's not going to stop. You're still continuing to work it.
Never thought of it that way. Um, Maybe I should use my brain more. But I never. It's true though. Your brain
Yeah.
is always exercising, if you will.
Yes.
And now, if you teach it the right way to exercise, it's got memory, I guess, and it's going to continue to go in that direction, the positive direction that maybe somebody has learned through your program. Wow, amazing.
Yeah.
Medication. Let's say uh, a child is on medication,
Mhm.
ADHD. We'll go there.
Okay.
How does that look after the program? Are they weaned off of it? Dosage change? Not use it anymore?
Oh, so medication is an interesting thing. First of all, in terms of the body, the way that we are engineered as human beings, we're designed to seek more and more. So if you look at a kid or an adult, any type of medication, we tend to want more and more. So a doctor, in terms of ADHD medication, as an example, will increase the dosage over time. So you might 12 to 14 months they increase it, and then 12 to 14 months later they increase it a little bit more, and then so on and so forth until at some point, if they're a smart doctor, they'll actually switch medications because your body's gotten used to that, and you'll start over. So to answer your question, ideally, and we can't recommend this. We're not medical doctors. We're not the child's doctor or person's doctor, so we can't tell you to go to your doctor and get off the medication, but you won't need it anymore. Medication, by the way, remember that the issue is a hemispheric imbalance. Medication doesn't target one hemisphere or the other; it targets the whole body. So it's all it's doing is providing a band-aid for a problem and actually not solving the problem at all.
Well, isn't that the basis for most meds? It doesn't go to the root. It just takes care of the symptoms.
That is correct. I love that you said the root.
Yeah, we're getting to the root challenge here when it comes to
Yeah.
autism, and autism is definitely included in this program, correct?
Yes. Autism, ADHD, dyslexia, those are the core ones we work with, but also dyscalculia, dysgraphia, dysphagia, anxiety, OCD, ODD, those types of things.
What's your background?
My background is in psychology. So I'm actually a practicing therapist. That's primarily what I do,
Hmm.
in addition to running the business from being the face of it in terms of talking to fine folks like you and running the business from a structure and um, system standpoint.
What do you want parents to know? You know, if their child is going through challenges like autism, maybe recently diagnosed, ADHD, even dyslexia. Overall, what do you want them to walk away with today?
Primarily that it can be corrected, that the issues can be taken care of in a very short period of time, relatively. So, for example, nonverbal autism could take up to 2 years. I mean, and we get that it's a lot of work. ADHD can take about 12 weeks. It's going to be somewhere in there. It depends upon the severity.
Sure.
But it can be corrected, and it can be corrected without medication or invasive procedures. There is an answer, essentially. That's what I want parents to walk away from. And the question I would have provide if a parent says, I'm not sure I believe you, I would want them to ask their provider, what's going on in the brain of my child? Just tell me that. What's going on in the brain of my child that's causing this problem? And if the provider can answer that, great. But most can't. And we can. I can tell you specifically what's going on and why it's happening and what to do about it. That's
I,
actually what an
I
assessment does.
honestly was going to ask you, and you mentioned autism. What's going on with autism? What causes it?
So primarily the cause is again retained primitive reflexes. Now what causes that is generally trauma, but not always. So and one of the reflexes is spinal galant, which is what is there to help a baby make its way through the birth canal. So if a baby was born with C-section, it didn't use that reflex. And so the brain is essentially waiting for the child to use the reflex. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So since that's happening, the brain is sitting there going, okay, well, I'm not going to develop any further. So it's an immature brain. Excuse me. It's an immature brain waiting for the reflex to go away so that it can now develop properly. Autism is a left brain strong issue. Sometimes in more severe cases, so ASD2 and ASD3, where it requires more support, the left hemisphere is strong enough to shut down or weaken the right hemisphere. It requires both hemispheres to actually be a well-developed human being. They actually have to work together. They do different things, not the same thing. And they have to work together to make it to be fully functional.
Where did your fascination come with psychology, the way the brain works?
Mostly from reading as a youth, in terms of me. Um, I was a voracious reader as a kid, and I read, and a lot of it was, I was a kid, so I read a lot of science fiction and fantasy and stuff like that. But I also read a lot of self-help books, and I read a lot of books that talked about the way that our brains work. One of my favorites was Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss. I read a lot of the other folks that we've all heard about, Tony Robbins, Wayne Dyer, and so on and so forth. So it kind of got me fascinated about how things work. And then my training is in psychology, and actually I have a doctorate in hypnosis. That's where my doctorate is in. It educated me in terms of how things happen and why things happen. And then when Jackie got involved in this end of it, I started studying with her to learn, like, how does this happen and why does this happen? And it all, for me, all fell together.
Wow. Did it feel like this is my purpose? I found my purpose.
Yes, yes, yeah. And that's one of the, for me, one of the, I guess, frustrating things, maybe sad things, is when we have somebody come in and we know we can help them, and they're not convinced. And it's like, what did I not say to tell you that we can do this for you? And if you feel like I'm not sure you're the person that can do this, but I think this method works, great. We'll refer you to somebody else. And I've done that. I've actually had people who've come to me from different states and saying, look, I would love for you to come visit me, but there's somebody in your area who you can go visit, and here's their information. Because it's not about, there's according to the CDC, 50% of the kids born this year will have autism. Now I don't know if that's true or not, but let's say they're wildly off, and it's 1 in 8. That is such a huge population that we can't solve that problem alone.
Mm.
I would love to be able to say, if you don't believe we can do the job for you, go see this other person.
100%. And I'm hearing more and more cases of ADHD, autism being diagnosed with adults. Like later in life, people in the 30s and
Yes.
40s, it's coming up.
Yeah. We're actually seeing a lot of people being diagnosed who have been diagnosed with autism, being diagnosed with ADHD. I have a belief that some of it may be related to that it's easier for the to prescribe medication because there's not really an autism medication. But I'm not sure that that's true. This is my personal belief because I think the prescription of medication for problems like this is out of control.
Mm.
But again, that's my personal belief. Don't hold it against me.
Well, I don't want to agree with you just to agree with you, but from what I've been seeing, have to agree with you. It's so easy for a script to be written because a practitioner doesn't know what else to do.
Right.
Doesn't know.
Right. I was actually talking to an MD friend of mine a while back, and I said, I believe that you as a medical doctor recognize that there's a problem in terms of a kid not meeting their milestones or that they have these primitive reflexes,
Sure.
but you don't know what to do about it. And he goes, you're absolutely right. We're not trained to. And so I was like, wow, that's interesting and sad at the same time.
Yeah. And I've even seen situations where through friends, they've gone to see a primary care doctor. And maybe the child is having some challenges and the doctor prescribed some meds for it. And it got to the point where it wasn't working. And the primary said, I'm tapping out, can't help you anymore. And my thinking is, why did you even go there in the first place? I don't mean the parent, why'd you go there, but why did the doctor go there? And why not just say, yeah, I'm not qualified. I'm going with that. Yeah.
Exactly.
Amazing. You're in Cary, North Carolina. What's the best way to find you? And certainly we're spreading awareness around the world for this, and it's fantastic. There's something for parents to grab onto, some hope here. Best way to find you, what's the website?
NeuroFitConnections.com. So it's NeuroFit connections.com. And then the easiest way is actually our phone number, which is 833-NFC-KIDS. Excuse me. 833-NFC-KIDS.
Thank you for what you're doing. I got to tell you,
my pleasure. Knowing
a lot of parents that have children with challenges and not knowing where to turn, this is fantastic. And I don't know if you've thought about it, but franchise this thing, get it around the country. That
would be our next step. But first, we want to handle North Carolina. Take care of the local folks first. I'm kind of biased.
No, I got you. Well, you know what? It starts at home. It starts at home.
It does.
Tim, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it. And everything that you and your wife are doing. And looking forward if we get a chance to talk again. There's a lot going on here. We focus a little bit more on ADHD and a little bit on autism, but behavioral issues and all of that, which I'm sure NeuroFiT can address, right?
I think we can.
Terrific. Again, thank you so much.
You have a great day. Thanks, Steve.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house.
And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned.
This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.